a very strong defense of the Lions quarterback. And hey, how do you make him better for next season?
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, we are back, everybody, with a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day on the #1 sports podcast network. Matt Dery with you. Today is Tuesday, December 30th, and a Wednesday, December 31st. Thanks for being with us, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts, making us your first listen. And hey, do not forget, we're here all week this week. We'll have the crossover with Lauren Cox, the host of Locked On Bears, on Thursday. I remain on vacation at parts unknown, so at times, if the YouTube feed is not the best and you see some graininess in the broadcast, we're doing the best we can to get through this with the Wi-Fi that we have. Now, coming up on the show today, Colton Pouncy from The Athletic and the Lions Collective podcast will join us. Colton does a great job covering the team on The Athletic. If you don't subscribe to him, you should at theathletic.com. We'll ask him what happened here in 2025, why the Lions are staring down the face of an 0-9 gun. That's what's staring them in the face coming up Sunday in Chicago. Before that, though, before we get to Colton and everything else, talking with him about his reaction to this season, earlier today, we want to get right to it. Earlier today, Dan Campbell had his weekly hit on the 97.1 The Ticket morning show. It was Stoney filling in for John Jansen, joined, of course, by Jim Costa. And Costa starts asking Dan Campbell about Jared Goff and his thoughts on Goff and what happened on Christmas Day. And Dan Campbell very defiantly, very adamantly, very strongly defended his quarterback. I mean, just cut Jim off. And it was a good question by Jim. But Campbell was very strong in cutting Costa off to say, Jared Goff is a stud. He is our quarterback. He's going to be here. He's not going anywhere. I think the actual phrase was, he's going nowhere. And look, whenever Jared Goff has a bad game, or whenever Jared Goff's season ended the way it has, and it ended very poorly last year in the playoffs against the Commanders, it ended very poorly this past Thursday, Christmas Day in Minnesota. And let's be honest, I am voting for the Lions to sit Jared Goff and St. Brown and Sewell and all these guys for this Sunday game in Chicago, because I truly believe nothing good can come of it. I know there are fans and our everydayers and some of our listeners and viewers that are going, no, let's end the season 9-8. Let's spoil Ben Johnson's season. Let's sweep the Bears. Let's force the Bears to have to play the Rams in the first round and the 3-6 as opposed to playing a banged-up Packer team at 2-7. I get all that. I just don't want to see Penei Sewell limping off the field or Jahmyr Gibbs getting a massive Achilles injury or anybody tearing an ACL and not starting next season. This game means nothing. If the Lions for the last 2 years have not played any of their starters in the preseason to avoid injury, why would they play anybody this week? Now, Goff was on the radio today on the midday show on the ticket and said he wants to play. And he feels like because he's getting paid a lot of money, he should be out there. I see his point. But I think for the future and the greater good of the franchise, let's rest the starters. This game has no meaning. Doesn't matter if they finish 9-8, 9-8, or 8-9. If anything, they finish 8-9, they'll get a better draft position. With that being said, I agree with Dan Campbell about the future at quarterback for this team and that it is number 16. I think they can win with Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff is really good. Do you have to have the pieces around him, a good running game, a very good offensive line? Yes, he's not somebody that's mobile and makes a lot of plays on his own. But there seems to be a lot of chatter and a lot of talk about one guy that could come in here and make Jared Goff's life a whole lot easier next year. And it's something that's attainable for this franchise if Brad Holmes elects to go against the grain of what he usually does. What don't the Lions do every offseason? They don't break the bank for free agents. They rarely spend big dollars and outspend people to get players. Now, they paid a lot of money for DJ Reader 2 years ago. Gave him $13.5 million over 2 years, or $26 million over 2 years. They gave DJ Reed big money to be their number one corner this past season. But have they ever spent money on an outside free agent and made that player maybe the highest paid player at his position? They have not. But If Frank Ragnow decides to stay in retirement and not come back, which he was trying to do this year and then got hurt again, you need a center. And the second best center in the AFC is available. And I know I'm not stealing thunder. I'm not coming up with this myself. There's been plenty of people that have talked about it. But Tyler Linderbaum from the Ravens is a free agent. For some strange reason, Baltimore elected not to pick up his fifth-year option before last season. But this year, he made his third straight Pro Bowl, and they didn't want to pick up that option because that option probably would have been worth about $24 million. And Creed Humphrey, the best center in the NFL, is the highest paid in the league at $18 million. So the Ravens, my guess is saying, we're not going to pick up that option, but hey, we're going to do everything we can to keep our guy here. Tyler Linderbaum for the last 5 years has been Baltimore's center, and he's been great. He's been really, really good. The last 3 years, Pro Bowler. You want to make Jared Goff's life easier. You want to bolster this offensive line. You want to put a stud in the middle of that offensive line to replace Ragnow and not have to worry about anything for the next 5 years. Go out and get Tyler Linderbaum. He's going to command a lot of money. He's going to be the highest paid center. Maybe it's $21 million. Maybe it's $22 million. Maybe you're out. You got to outbid the Ravens. And Baltimore has always been a winning organization, and they're usually pretty good about this. Who knows? Linderbaum may have an agreement with the Ravens about, I'm staying. Don't worry about the option. We'll figure it out. I want to be here. Tyler Linderbaum played at Iowa. He played with Sam Laporta in college. He played with Jack Campbell in college. We know the Lions love Iowa players. Go get this guy. They made it a point today of saying their head coach, Jared Goff's going nowhere. Well, if he's going nowhere, get him help. The Band-Aid of Graham Glasgow and Tristan Colon and Kingsley Aguakin is not going to cut it. You want to go get a stud and do something out of the ordinary for this franchise. Why not go and get the best center that's going to be on the market? And he's going to be on the market unless the Ravens come up with some sort of an agreement with him as free agency starts and he stays and doesn't look to shop around, but he'd be silly not to. And yes, I get it. Paying a center that much money is a lot. He's not a tackle. But that's the target. That is the target. He's a really, really good player. And after Creed Humphrey from Kansas City, he is considered the second best center, at least in the AFC. And you can make a case for Juergens in the NFC with Philly or any of the others that are really good. Drew Dahlman had a really good year for the Bears this year and made the Pro Bowl. But I'll take Linderbaum all day. Let's reunite him with his buddies, Jack and Sam. Let's go. I'm in for that. Colton Pouncy from theathletic.com is going to join us next. I'll ask him about that. And, of course, his thoughts on what took place really this season and what happened with this Lions franchise and why they are where they are right now. We'll do that next with Colton right here on Locked On Lions. All right, Locked On Lions forward today, brought to you by our friends at Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save you hours every week. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. You'll get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months for free at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, very quickly, everybody, let's tell you about our Everydayer Club. You want to join the Locked On Lions Everydayer Club? We'd love to have you. Thank you for making Locked On Lions your first listen of the day. And thanks for making us Locked On, the number one sports podcast network. All right. If you haven't already, check out our Everydayers Club. Access, you get to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Lions, complete with that's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server. All right, chat with me, chat with other everyday listeners. It's a group chat for listeners of the show. I'm on there hanging out, and you could be there as well. Go to lockedonlions.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, as promised, here he is, great beat writer from theathletic.com, also the Lions Collective podcast, Welcome to Detroit podcast. He's everywhere. Colton Pouncy, our friend from The Athletic, joins us today. Colton, good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. How you doing?
Hanging in, my man. Happy New Year. Happy holidays to you. I don't know. This is weird, right? We're talking about week 18. The game means nothing. It's not what any of us expected, right?
No, not at all. I mean, even a few weeks ago, I thought that this could be maybe a win-and-in scenario for both teams if the Bears collapsed and the Lions got the job done against other opponents. But here we are, and the Bears are fighting for seeding, and the Lions are fighting for nothing. So it's been an interesting season. I don't think a lot of people expected the Bears to be where they are, but did not expect to see the Lions on the outside looking in the playoff race.
Before I ask you what happened and I can get all your thoughts on everything, I did want to bring up, before you came on, I brought up the thought, and I know I'm not breaking any news here. This has been on the internet. People have written about it. Tyler Linderbaum just seems to be a name that all of a sudden is linked to, all right, Dan Campbell was adamant today on the radio, Jared Goff's our guy. Well, if he's your guy, go get him the best center that's out there in Linderbaum. Do you see a scenario where that could take place and Brad Holmes does something he doesn't normally do, and that is pluck another free agent and spend a lot of money?
Yeah, I've been thinking about Linderbaum a lot lately, and I really don't know how realistic it is, but man, if there's any chance that you can bring that guy in, for so long I thought the Ravens wouldn't let him go, but they've extended a lot of their own guys, and he's kind of been on that back burner of players that they've had prioritized over the last few months, I would say. So if he does hit free agency, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of teams that are interested in him. He's one of the best centers in football. He's an all-pro level talent, but if there's any way that the Lions can get involved, I would probably take a serious look, because look, if you are going to build around Jared Goff, we know what he needs. And I do think he's elevated his game this year with, an offensive line that's been shaky, but if you go and get him, a young Frank Ragnow, so to speak, and Tyler Linderbaum, that can shore up a lot of issues in that interior. He can help the young guys like Tate and Christian along, and he can kind of plug a lot of holes there. So I don't know how realistic it is. I don't want to get people's hopes up, but I've been wondering, if there's any way they can get on that sweepstakes, if he's available, might be worth looking into.
Yeah, I mean, do some research. See if he was at Sam Laporta's wedding or something. They went to Iowa together,
Jack Campbell.
I'm looking, I wish I had time around my vacation to scroll Instagram and try to find it. But hey, any connection would be great, right?
Absolutely, you take what you can get.
So the Lions are 8-8. They're staring down the barrel of 8-9 and the possibility of a losing record. I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but what happened? Why are they where they are right now in your mind?
Yeah, there's a point where it looked like they were going to take the North again, and we're looking pretty good. And then things just kind of fell apart. I actually did like a midseason story at the bye, just kind of evaluating where the offense and defense was at that point in time, and even just diving into some numbers and going back and watching some film myself. You're kind of looking at these underlying metrics, and you're like, oh, they're like, outside the top 15 and offensive rushing success rate. Like, they're just not an efficient team on certain situations. And you're kind of looking at this. They're like, the pure numbers will tell you they lead the league in scoring, top 5 rushing offense, but your eyes tell you something different, and the numbers do too, like the underlying metrics there. So I was kind of keeping my eye on that midseason. I'm like, okay, new offensive coordinator might take some time to kind of get this thing going, new pieces on the offensive line. I think they kept telling themselves that it's going to come together. I really do. They have a confidence in their own guys. We know how Dan Campbell is. He's going to believe in his guys first and foremost, but it never came together the way that they thought it would, the way they sort of envisioned. And there's a point, I want to say in the last month and a half, where Dan Campbell was asked on 97.1 just kind of what the strength of this team is, this offense is. And he didn't even say the offensive line. And I thought that was sort of the most telling point in all this, because normally that's the first place he goes to. Did not even mention them. He mentioned skill guys, Jared, the running backs, but the offensive line is sort of the heartbeat of how this thing goes. Then you look over on defense. Yeah. Obviously, the injuries in the secondary, that's going to coincide with some of the explosive numbers that they've given up in the passing game. But the front seven was relatively healthy, and I thought that unit kind of underproduced. I know the sacks looked good. They sort of came in bunches there. But the run defense kind of fell off a cliff late in the year. I don't think the pass rush was consistent enough game to game. And there were injuries to Marcus Davenport. You thought that he could stay healthy. I guess that didn't happen. He's never been able to do it in his career. Levi Enrique and Josh Pascal, these guys that you depended on just weren't available. So, I do think they have some questions this offseason. It just, to me, it was the trench play, defensive line and offensive line. And if that's not good enough, it's not going to be good enough elsewhere.
Colton Pouncy with us, beat writer for theathletic.com, also a podcast star everywhere in the Motor City. Let me ask you this. Campbell seemed to defend Kelvin Sheppard again today too, on that same radio show, and just said, look, he needs more time. So is it pretty much a lock that you would say new offensive coordinator, yes, but new defensive coordinator, no?
I think that's where I'm going. Just because I think with Shep, you knew there were going to be some growing pains along the way. This is a first-year rookie DC. And I think you like the idea that he's learned from Aaron Glenn, and he has these other influences from great DCs like Lou Anarumo and Spags over in KC. But it was going to take time for him to kind of build this defense in his own image. And for what Dan wanted out of that position, out of a DC, I should say, he wanted a guy that would continue what AG did, which was the heavy man system and all that stuff in place defensively that they already had. And so if you're going to ask him to run that defense, he's got to have the pieces to run it. And really the secondary wasn't available to him. So when it fell off a cliff late in the year, I think it did kind of coincide with the secondary falling apart, losing a Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph not being available. Terran Arnold, that was playing some good football before he got hurt. I know he was kind of hurt all year, but I thought he was kind of coming into his own. So you lose those three guys, it's kind of tough. Now, the one thing I would say is he was the linebackers coach here, and I did think the run game slipped late in the year. And I don't know if that was him overcompensating for the lack of depth in the back end by, moving things around, but he didn't have the right answers down the stretch. So I almost, if they do make a change there, to me, it would only be like if we want to change this defensive scheme entirely and just overhaul it. I'm not sure Dan's there because that's what he wanted. He wanted a DC who was like AG and a defense that was like the defense that he was running before he left. So we'll see. But on offense, I don't know. If you're taking over play calling halfway through it, usually writing's on the wall for the OC. So we'll see what happens with John Morton.
Yeah, and obviously, that the first move would be to remove John Morton from those duties completely and make a clean break. And I know that those guys get along and everything else, and they've been friends in the past. But do you see a scenario where the Lions get aggressive and go get a Brian Daboll? What if Kevin Stefanski gets let go in Cleveland and is an OC next year? Do they go and steal Antoine Randall away from the Bears and make him OC? Do you see any of those scenarios happening?
I could. I mean, Campbell and Daboll go way back. They're good buddies. I think Daboll tells a story where Campbell was in his office, like throwing chairs, trying to get a job from him. So those guys have a good connection. If he wants to continue coaching as an OC, I can see that making sense. But, Dan usually sticks to his coaching ties. So I'd be curious to see, if that move is made and he moves on from John Morton, kind of if he dips back in that well or if he branches outside for probably the first time since he's been the head coach here in Detroit, because it might be time to take a closer look elsewhere.
There are a lot of players, and I'm going to get to the Chicago game, I promise, but there are a lot of players, tons of the Lions' own free agents, a lot of one-year deals. Would you venture to say that the guy they've got to retain that's at the top of the list is probably Al-Quadin Muhammad?
That he's a tough one because I believe he's 30, will be 31 next year maybe. And he has a year of good production under his belt with double-digit sack season. But there were times this year where they just didn't use him. It's because they didn't trust him in the run game, if I had to guess. They kind of had to lean on him more as the year progressed. But there were times where he just wasn't part of the game plan. And that doesn't speak like, to me, a guy you absolutely need to retain. Now, if we're looking at the list of one-year guys, he might be near the top just because of what he gave you production-wise. But how they used him kind of spoke volumes to me. Sometimes they use him, sometimes they didn't. So I don't know if they think he's like a true every down defensive end. And if you're talking about that dude in the open market, maybe he's looking at 8-10 million. I don't know. That might be on the higher end, but I'm curious what his market looks like, and if it's too much for the Lions to afford, or if they'd rather invest that money elsewhere. I'd like to see what they do there.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about edge rusher, help for Aiden, whether it's D tackles, D ends. Al-Quadin, to look at the numbers at the end of the year, you go, man, 11 sacks is pretty good. Lions are playing a football game here, a tackle football game on Sunday in Chicago against the Bears. I want to ask Colton about the approach the Lions are going to have. We'll do that coming up next. But first, Locked On Lions brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Hey, whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, try something new because it can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it's so much fun. It always feels good to be right with Prize Picks. High-pressure football matchups here down the stretch, including here in Week 18, and elite hoops action almost every night, including Pistons and Lakers tonight. The action never slows down. Prize Picks lets you stay in control. It's a daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player stat projections. No drafts, no waiting. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections and just play your way. It's a lot of fun. The new early payouts feature is a game changer as well. If the player starts out hot, you can cash out before the game ends. Getting started on Prize Picks is quick and simple too. The app is super easy to navigate, so you got to check it out. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. You hear him on Lions Collective, the podcast. Welcome to Detroit as well with Nick Baumgardner, and you read him in theathletic.com. Colton Pouncy with us here on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions. Lions at the Bears on Sunday. Touchdown Bears. Yes, the Lions are, it sounds like, going to field a football team and try to play to win. Colton, Dan Campbell was kind of on a maybe basis yesterday when asked if the regulars are going to go. Today, Jared Goff's like, I'm playing. What do you think they should do?
What I think they should do is probably kind of rest every guy that's even slightly banged up. That's just me, because I think this is a meaningless game. It doesn't mean you could tell yourself that, oh, this is good for momentum, we don't quit. And I get there's a messaging aspect in that, and like that's sort of their identity. So like for how they do things, I get why they might want to play some guys. But when I'm looking at this as sort of a neutral observer here, I say Amon-Ra St. Brown left that game late against the Vikings, was injured. Penei Sewell, it was injured and came back in that game, and just to give themselves a chance at the playoffs, didn't end up winning it. So like you have all these guys that are kind of walking around in, like Ali McNeil was injured, Alexander Zaloni with a concussion. Like I don't really see a reason to push it for one game. And maybe some of these guys that are on 1-year deals, maybe you want to, go out with a bang if you can. But I think the writing was kind of on the wall last week. Like you had a chance to keep your playoff hopes alive and make this game actually matter for something, and you laid an egg on Christmas. So to me, that was your chance. So I'd rather, rest some of these guys, get a better draft pick. And that 4th place schedule, I know people have it's been a weird conversation. Oh, we shouldn't want to fight for 4th place schedule. You want to play the best. I'm like, I get it. But if you're looking at, the Titans, the Giants, the Cardinals are the 3 teams that you would play if you get the 4th place schedule, what's already a lost season this year, I would personally rather play those teams than one of the Rams, I think, are in 3rd right now in the NFC West. That'd be one of the teams you would play next year in LA. Give me the Cardinals. I'm just saying that right now, but that's just me looking at the outside looking in.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I heard the clip this morning from the ticket with Goff. He's always on the midday show, and I give him credit. He's like, hey, I want to play. I talked to St. Brown. He wants out there. We make a lot of money. We're paid to play. We want to play. We want to, and I get, like you said, from a messaging perspective, but Jared Goff nearly got his head taken off last week, Colton, in Minnesota. I mean, Brian Flores sent those boys after him all day. And it's just like, give me Kyle Allen this week in that cold weather, and let's just put Jared in mothballs for next year, right?
Yeah, that just makes the most sense to me. Like for a team that goes as hard as the Lions do, and for a team as injured as the Lions are every single year, at least you were fighting for stuff the previous 2 years when all those injuries were stacked up.
Right.
You're fighting for nothing right now. So you might as well rest these guys, put them in bubble wrap and say, hey, we'll see you for OTAs. Like that's the easiest thing to me.
And this organization has rested their starters now the last couple of years in the preseason, then played in all, and they were all rusty in week one. And so what's the difference? I get the pride thing, and I get you don't want to finish with a losing record. And hey, it would be kind of cool to say for the last 4 years they've had a winning record every year. But at the end of the day, you want to build this thing back up, and I think they can do it quickly. And you bring up a lot of good points about some of the regulars. I mean, it's interesting. Campbell has said now 2 days in a row that there are some guys they want to take a look at. Who do you think he's talking about?
Probably Kingsley. Get some more of these young guys some looks, maybe play Tesla some more snaps, let him be a feature guy if St. Brown rests with his injury. But I don't know. There's not like maybe give DJ Reader a break. And again, that could be his last game. So maybe he wants to play. Last game as a Lion. But Tyleik Williams, they probably want to see more of him. He's had this sort of reduced role since Aleem came back. So, or if Aleem, who was hurt in that last game, maybe you don't play him and then Tyleik can get some more snaps there. So I think there are some ways to get some young guys some more looks. And I don't know, maybe Miles Frazier. But again, if you're talking about playing these young guys on the offensive line, then I'd rather see Kyle Allen in there than Jared Goff. So that's sort of the question. It's like, how much do you want to take out if you do want to get that look? Because I feel like a lot of their young pieces are along the offensive line. And if you're putting your star quarterback out there in a meaningless game, probably doesn't make much sense to do that. So I don't know. We'll see. It seems like those guys want to play, though, and I respect it. At the end of the day, they're competitors, and they don't want to go out with a losing season. They don't want to go out on a 4-game losing streak. Just try to stop the bleeding a little bit. If you can do that and ruin some people in Chicago's day, I'm sure they'd be happy with that. But I don't know. I feel like you're kind of splitting hairs there and probably hurting yourself in the long term.
Can I ask you, too, like, Mekhi Wingo deactivated every week. Could he play in this game, or are they just done with him?
I feel like they're kind of done with him. Like they could have used him at any point this year. I think we saw him maybe week 2 against Chicago, and we haven't seen him much since. So, I mean, I feel like their actions kind of speak to that player in particular. But why not? If it's week 18, you're trying to empty the bench a little bit, then I'd like to see him get some run because, we talked to Casey Rogers a few weeks ago, maybe like 3 weeks ago, and he said that Mekhi is close. He's doing the right things behind the scenes, but again, their actions say otherwise. So, maybe a guy like that, you throw him out there for week 18 just as extra depth and see what he can do.
Yeah, really liked him out of college. Liked him when he started here, and I just talk about buried. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. All right, my friend. We'll stay warm up there in your hometown, up there in Chicago, and appreciate you coming on as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Colton Pouncy with us from theathletic.com and all over the podcast scene, including the Lions Collective Show with Justin Rogers and that crew. We're back again tomorrow with a Wednesday Locked On Lions.